Thank you guys for following us along this journey. We just got back from our big trip to Albania. So we wanted to update you guys about how we're feeling about that upcoming move now after being able to go and see it more than just looking at videos on YouTube. So yeah.
Kind of the primary thing that we were looking to accomplish throughout this was just like the general vibe check of the country. So I guess we can start off there. How did it feel for you?
I think it was a little chaotic at first because we were staying in Tirana to start off. I think if I did it in hindsight, tried to stay in one of the smaller areas because it was a little crazy where we were. There was a bus stop. We were right near Skanderbeg Square, so a lot of people waiting around the area. A lot of cafes in the area, which was great once we kind of got used to that. But it was a little overwhelming at first. But other than that, once we kind of got used to the goings-on in the area, it was less scary.
Yeah, I would agree. And we had come from Venice to start off with, so we were going from a place where there are literally zero cars and we hadn't seen a car for days at a time to staying like right in the city center of the capital city of Albania. So I think that was kind of where, at least for me, a lot of the culture shock kind of stemmed from. It was not only going to a city center, which we're not used to, but coming from such a relatively quiet and calm area that was Venice. Now we are in the midst of like urban chaos, and that was kind of a lot.
Venice in the off season, not crazy summer Venice. It was pretty nice, not super crowded. So yeah, going from you could walk down a street or an alley and not see a single other person to people around all the time. That's just a big change for us.
It's tough because I liked where we stayed from the standpoint that it was close to so much and it was great to be able to see so much. You were walking distance to Skanderbeg Square and a lot of the museums that we wanted to see and things like that. But it's not the part of town that we would choose to live in, which when a large part of this trip is trying to gauge if this is a country that we would want to live in, maybe we should have chosen a little bit more wisely in hindsight about what neighborhood we stayed in. But we did take some time to get out of Tirana and then also into some more calmer parts of Tirana. And I think that helped quite a bit put that kind of into context that we chose like probably the most difficult spot in the country for us to adapt to. And that said, like, I think it was all still pretty fine.
Yeah, everyone was nice and pleasant and there wasn't any like weirdness with that. It was just a lot of energy.
Yeah. And the big thing that I kind of had as a takeaway with all of that energy was that it would be really, I think that we'd be able to adapt to it eventually, but I think the dogs, particularly Cookie, would not do well with all that hustle and bustle around. Her old bones are just not cut out for that right now. And especially down in that part of town where it's a lot of older buildings, which means tiny elevators, if elevators at all. I think we'd have a hard time convincing Nilla to go into such a small elevator. And Cookie needs an elevator. Training, yeah. So that said, like there's other parts of the country that A, we visited, and B, that we'd be looking to move to. So we wouldn't be confined to just the urban chaos that we experienced a little bit there. One of the days we took an excursion down towards Tirana Lake Park, which once we got kind of down to that part of town, a little bit farther away from the hustle and bustle, and you could kind of see a little bit more, I don't want to say like quiet neighborhoods, but quieter than like deep downtown areas. You could much more easily picture ourselves.
Yeah, because there's like the neighborhood businesses, not the mall and the square and the bus stop and all the cafes with everybody waiting around. It's just a lot more going on and we typically do that when we go traveling, is go to where all the stuff is going on. So it's easy to get everywhere.
Right.
It just made it harder to have a more relaxed, like, well, we're just going to feel it out for a week.
Yeah, which I think where we stayed was perfect for a pure vacation, but didn't give us like a true to life picture of what our life there would look like, because we wouldn't typically choose to live somewhere that happening.
Yeah, but you go like one block, like northeast of where we were, and it was like very quiet. You have all of the markets and the stalls, the stores that you'd get your bread, get your meat, get your vegetables at. And just literally one street away, it was much quieter.
Yeah, just had to still get bombarded with all of the action leaving the apartment to get there. So, but I think despite that chaos, for me at least, Tirana is still more or less past the vibe check for me.
Yeah, just a little further outside of the main square area, I think would be fine.
Agreed, yeah. But more importantly, we also stopped in Durres and Vlora. Mm-hmm. For us, those have been kind of our top two cities for at least our first year post-move, primarily because you can take a ferry from Italy over to one of those towns. And with the dogs, there's a decent chance that we'll be flying into Italy or some other part of Europe and then finding our way down to Bari or Brindisi to take one of those ferries over. And once we're there, I would prefer to not figure out how to move the dogs to another city right away. I'd much rather just be able to find a place to stay with them there. Mm-hmm. So the Durres and Vlora vibe checks were honestly a little bit more important for me because those are more realistic destinations for us, at least in the immediate. And I guess we'll start off with Durres. We didn't stay there very long. We just did a little day trip down, took the bus from Tirana for the afternoon, but we still got to kind of feel out the city some. And what were your impressions on Durres?
Was still a little more built up. Like most people talk about, it still has all of the facilities that you would expect with a larger city. But you're a little outside of Tirana, but you still get that beach kind of vibe. We weren't able to get down to the beach itself, so we were closer to the port, so that just seemed a little more business centered, not as like just go walk down by the beach and relax, which is what I would be looking for in one of those communities on the coast, more of a laid back kind of vibe. But around the amphitheater and some of the old ruins that we were walking around, that area was very nice and very relaxed. Mm-hmm. We would just have to figure out like where are the other places that we can go that weren't just walking distance from the bus stop, because we took the bus and that kind of restricted us. We didn't take taxis further. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I agree. It was still a beach town. I mean, it was great just to see the water, and that's huge bonus points for anywhere, honestly. Mm-hmm. But it did feel more like city-ish, I guess, as opposed to like laid-back surfer town. Mm-hmm. And not that that's a bad thing. It definitely seemed like there was still a lot going on. We were there off of peak tourist season, and to see that there's still plenty of things open, and it's not like we've heard about Saranda in particular, where it just becomes a ghost town once the tourist clears out. It didn't really have any of that feel in Durres. It seems like it really is a full-time city that is really nice, because then you're not having to worry about your favorite restaurant being closed 3/4 of the year, or
the vet.
The vet packs up and leaves. Or
yeah. Without knowing more about what kind of services aren't there in the off season, that would give me reservation about moving somewhere. Because like it would be really important to know that the pet stores are open, so we can get dog food for the dogs, we can take the dogs to the vet, that we can get all the groceries that we want. We can leave the house and go have a dinner when we feel like it. Right.
And with Durres, I don't think that would be a problem, at least in the part of town that we were. Maybe that was because we were closer to the port as opposed to the resorts. It seemed like everything was still pretty like open. We weren't like gearing up for a seasonal closure or anything. But definitely in general more relaxed than the part of Tirana we were staying in. But I think definitely. It probably was on par-ish with the outskirts of Tirana, the little bit that we saw of that.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But it's somewhere that I could picture us staying potentially. Now, again, we're talking 10 hours or less of exposure to it, so it's hard to say for sure, but at least in that short time frame. I enjoyed my time there. If we did the trip again, I think maybe it would have been worth staying a couple nights there to see a little bit more of what Durres had to offer. Mm-hmm. And then our other stop was in Vlora, the other place where we'd be able to hop off the ferry. Mm-hmm. And
we did see the ferry while we were there in Vlora.
Yeah. We didn't see it moving, but we saw it parked or whatever
Docked.
they call docked. There you go. That one, Vlora was about a 4-hour bus ride?
Yeah, about a 4-hour with traffic and transfer, like just waited time.
And so a little bit farther from the capital than Durres, but supposedly there's going to be an airport in Vlora someday.
Next year, maybe.
Next year, maybe. It seems like it's been next year, maybe, for like a year. So
I think it's closer to next year, maybe, than it ever has been.
But that's another big thing for us is the airport accessibility. Durres and Tirana right now, currently, would have the advantage on that because they're both 30, 40 minutes from the airport. But once the one in Vlora opens up, it's obviously much closer to the airport at that point.
Yeah, and a 4-hour bus ride is long. It's also not the end of the world if we had to take the bus from Vlora into Tirana to take a flight. Mm. That's just part of your travel day. It would kind of stink, but it's not undoable.
Yeah. So right now it's a bit of a drawback, but not a deal breaker, but it's posed to be a huge plus in Vlora's favor once the new airport does open, finally. Supposedly they're going to run some nonstop flights from Vlora to the U.S. once that's open too, which will be pretty sweet. Just a much easier way to get back home if and when we need to.
Yeah.
But in general, Vlora felt even smaller and more laid back than Durres to me.
Yeah,
there weren't any like surfers out, but it definitely had more of like the surfer town vibe.
The beach town, like the American beach town, as far as having stuff kind of sent facing towards the beach and the walking on the beach and the strand and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. A little bit of a pier out with the restaurant on the end. So just more accessible to the beach to walk around and enjoy your day. Mm-hmm.
And we spent a lot more time in Vlora than we did in Durres. Because it was so far, it didn't make sense to do just a day trip. And in hindsight, I'm glad that we did more. We had planned for a single overnight there. And then once we started like actually thinking about like, oh geez, it's like 4 hours to get down there. And it's like basically going to just give us 2 half days. So we opted to try to add on a second day or a second overnight. So we would have the full 24 hours there to check it out more. And fortunately, this is, I guess, the benefit of it being off season and kind of shut down some. It was not very competitive for hotel rooms in the hotel we were at. I think we were the only people in the whole hotel.
For the first night.
For the first night.
For the second night, there was 2 people in the hotel.
But that meant they could easily add us on the second night, which was nice and was definitely the right choice. It was her idea, and it was a very good idea.
Yeah, I didn't want to have to spend 4 hours on the bus to get there and spend like half a day exploring, because then we'd have to time it right to get the bus on the way back too.
Yeah, so that gave us an entire full day there in addition to the travel days to kind of poke around. And stuff was definitely more shut down. Like we said, we were the only people in the hotel the first night we were there.
Well, like the touristy stuff was more shut down, but lots of restaurants and businesses were still open.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it was like a ghost town like we've heard about Saranda in particular, but it didn't feel like a ghost town in Vlora, at least. It still seemed pretty livable. All the pet stores, we were able to go into a couple pet stores in Vlora. I couldn't tell you if the vets that we saw were open or not. I don't think I looked that closely, but...
Yeah, when we went by them, it was kind of early in the day.
Okay.
I don't know, but...
They were at least
in
existence. Yes. But for me, it felt a lot more like what we were looking for. And the scale is obviously way, way smaller, but Vlora, which had more of like a San Diego vibe for me, which is
We love
one
San
of the
Diego.
places that I would love to have moved in the U.S. someday, maybe, if it wasn't so darn expensive.
Yeah.
Again, way, way smaller, which isn't a bad thing. But
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that is how the city is set up. I would say San Diego seems more like yes, there's tourists, but there's also still a lot of people that live there.
Mm-hmm.
And in Vlora, you saw more people who lived there, just like being out for their day, doing their shopping, walking around, getting coffee with friends,
yeah,
picking up their kids. We couldn't figure out the school schedules. It was really odd for us. People would come and pick up their kids like midday, and they weren't like really young kids, like it was a half day kindergarten, so we couldn't figure that out. But
yeah, if anybody is from there, if you could let us know like what the school schedule is like. It kind of seemed like maybe most kids go home for lunch somewhere between like 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. or something.
yeah, or they have half days for a much longer period than just kindergarten like they did when we were growing up here. But yeah, I couldn't quite figure that out. Yeah, that was just a curious thing. We don't have kids, so it wouldn't really impact us, but
No, just something that we couldn't figure out while we were there.
yeah, because we were doing so much observing of just kind of how people go to a cafe, how do they order, what's the, like, how do you do that? Do you sit down and then you order? Do you order and then you sit down? I guess we could talk about food and just like restaurants and that kind of experience. We've heard about the slower service because you're really enjoying your meals and you're enjoying your time. But it was a little confusing for us because it is very hands-off, even more so than Italy, where they give you your food and then they'll disappear for a while, but they'll check back in. And it seemed like in Albania there wasn't a lot of the check-in, so it made it really hard to like flag someone down to pay. And it was just confusing for us to figure out, so do we flag them down and pay with them, or do we like go pay somewhere else?
It seemed like eventually started to figure out, I guess, that you can just kind of walk up to your server wherever they are when you see them. Like if they're just chatting with a coworker up front of house or something, you can just go walk up and pay. But the problem was that didn't always seem consistent either.
Yes.
And we couldn't really tell the difference on when an establishment was going to be more informal and casual like that versus more structured and more like what we're used to, where they come and check on you and take your money at the table.
Yeah.
So
that would be an adjustment, just being in a different area and a different culture. But it was interesting to see, and I knew up front that was going to happen. That's something that I'm looking forward to in the long run. But with the stress of like being on vacation and like you're on limited time, it was hard to slow down some days.
Yeah, and just not knowing how to tell the difference between the different styles of service was kind of tough. Like there was one of the coffee shops we went to where we thought we had finally figured it out, that this brand of coffee shop, you go and you order at the counter and then you hand them a ticket somewhere else and you get your drink. And we thought we'd figured that out, and we went and we tried to do that, and they said, oh, no, this is not self-service, go take a seat. And then we went and did that, and they brought us the drinks that we had already ordered up at the counter, since we had already tried to order there. But then we never really saw people walking around
from the counter, and it was just was just really confusing. It was so disheartening because like you said, we finally figured it out, and then it didn't work the way we were expecting.
Yeah. We never saw anybody paying at their table at that place like we thought we had been told was going to be the way it worked. Yeah. And the more we sat there and watched, it seemed like people were going up and paying at the counter like we had just tried to do but got told no. So I don't know. Yeah. We misunderstood something, and because we thought we had finally figured it out. There's
definitely still that language barrier that'll take a while to work through, but it's nothing that's like, we had this experience, so we're never going to move there, and it was awful. It just highlights that it's a different culture, and it's just going to take time to figure it out.
Yeah. And I guess, quick detour off of food on the point of that language barrier. I guess that's more back into vibe check. Really, it wasn't a huge problem. I think a lot of the language barrier issues that we ran into were like the cultural side of language as opposed to the actual language. The English spoken everywhere was great. Mm-hmm. We had zero problems getting through speaking to people in English. But I think sometimes like words and connotations that we're used to as Americans are just different from what they're used to learning European English and learning it with the background of also speaking Albanian or other things. Mm-hmm. Just culturally, language is different from place to place, even if it's the same language. So, I mean, there'll be bumps in the road for sure, but I think by and large, like, if you're worried about not knowing Albanian, like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I wish I was better about understanding the, like, greetings and stuff like that, because that was still tripping me up, because it just, the sound is like nothing I've heard before, so that was really difficult for me. Because I'm not really good with phonetics anyway, like trying to sound stuff out, so that's just going to take a while for me to learn. But yeah, and everyone was very nice about it. We got bread, and Greg was trying to be helpful to help out with the change, and she just kind of looked at him, just shook her head, and took the money because we were overpaying, but we didn't know.
Yeah, Sarah pointed to the loaf of bread that she wanted, and we understood when she was asking if we wanted it sliced, and we said yes. Mm-hmm. And she brings it back over, and she points or turns the like register thing I think to show the price, and you gave her 200 lek. Uh-huh. And then she took that and then turned it back again to show us, and it said 120 lek on it. I was thinking, oh, I have 20 lek in my pocket. I can just make it 220 and we'll make it real easy, get 100 back. Mm-hmm. And didn't occur to us later that when she turned the machine around the second time, she was showing us what we were due back in change. So we should have paid 80 lek for the bread as it was listed on the thing. And instead we ended up paying the 120 because I'm dumb. But, oh well, live in life.
It was very good bread.
It was very good bread. It was well worth the 120 lek.
But yeah, another just, while English is still pretty good with most people, there are still people who don't speak English. So there's still times where it'd be really helpful to know the language.
Yeah, kind of the general rule of thumb that we've followed most places continued to be appropriate here. If somebody looks like they're under 40-ish, they probably speak decent English. Mm-hmm. But even if they don't, Google Translate works. Making gestures works, especially if you're trying to buy something. If you're clearly a customer talking to clearly a shop owner and you point to something, that's pretty good sign that that's the thing that you're trying to buy.
Yeah.
There are other ways to get by, but
it would feel nice to be able to like really communicate with the shop owners to express clearly that you like what they're providing to you. Mm-hmm. I think that was one thing. Like, it wasn't easy to express like my gratitude. Thank you. I'm like, yep, this is what I want. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
This looks delicious.
Exactly. And so that will still be a pretty high priority for us once we move, is learning the language, just to, again, we're not moving to change the culture of Albania. We would like to be integrated as best we can and respectful and, functional members of the culture.
Hey everyone, we're popping in here to talk about something that's been on our minds.
With the government shutdown and SNAP benefits being on hold, a lot of families are about to be without food support right before the holidays.
We've been lucky to have stable jobs, and we've given back to our community when we can, donating food and clothing and shopping local when times are tough.
But as we get ready to leave our stable jobs to move abroad, we need to save every penny we can. But we still want to help give back to those in need. So we came up with a plan that lets us do both.
From now through Christmas, we're donating to the Food Bank of the Rockies as our subscriber count grows. They've earned a 4-star Charity Navigator rating over the last 10 years. 96 cents of every dollar goes straight towards hunger relief programs.
So here's how it works. If we reach 250 subs, we'll donate $100. At 500 subscribers, we'll up that to $250. And if we reach 1,000 subscribers by Christmas, we'll add another $250 to make it $500 in total.
To help feed families, just hit subscribe.
Thanks for your help in this, and now, back to the video.
I would say the only thing that I would want to change is variety of foods. Because we were so spoiled here in America with the variety of foods that we have. That's one thing that I wish they had some more Asian restaurants and some Indian restaurants. There was actually an Indian restaurant in Tirana that I had on my list that we didn't go to because we didn't eat as much food as we thought we would.
No.
But that's one thing that'll be an adjustment for sure. And we'll have to bring some spices and stuff with us and some cans of Spam.
Yeah. That was, for the most part, we were able to track down most of the things on our shopping list just to see what was available and what wasn't. But Spam was the one elusive thing that I never managed to find either in like an alternative for.
The one uber American thing that I do enjoy.
Yeah, we don't eat it a ton, but when you want it, there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were eventually able to track down a decent supply of Asian goods.
Yes.
They weren't in the regular grocery store. We couldn't find them at like Spar or Cornet or those. But I can't remember the name of the place.
I'll put it up here somewhere, a picture of the name.
It was a chain, so there were several in Tirana. I think we saw one in Vlora also.
There was another one in Tirana that was supposed to have them, but they were closed when we went by, so we weren't able to check that one. But that one, they had a couple in Tirana, and they did have one in Vlora, I think. So, is that what you just said?
Yes.
Cool. So we have options to find like soy sauce and oyster sauce and stuff like that.
And it was definitely more expensive than the stuff in the regular grocery stores or the produce stalls, things like that. But it wasn't crazy. It wasn't like we'll no longer be able to afford to make these dishes at home.
Just special occasion.
Yeah, it might not be a nightly staple anymore, but it's still something that we'd be able to make on a reasonable budget. So that was encouraging. It would be tough to not be able to find any of your favorite foods anymore. And I'm sure that there are more budget-friendly options around, but the main Japanese restaurant that we kept finding ourselves walking past in Tirana was definitely out of our price range for
here the prices were like, oh my gosh, that looks amazing. But for there the prices were a little steep. But yeah, for like a nice dinner, we'll have to check it out someday because it looked really nice. There was like a plant wall that you had to like walk down this entryway. It looked really pretty.
Yeah, they almost got us because the entrance to the building looked so cool. But in Vlora, we saw it on the map as a sushi place, and I think we were going to go and have some sushi. But then when we got there, their noodle and rice bowls looked a lot better. So we ended up having that, and I had a handmade udon noodle bowl that was really, really, really good.
Yeah, his was better than mine. Mine was just like packaged ramen. It still tasted good, but yours was better.
That was one of the better noodle bowls I've had anywhere, so would go back.
Yeah. That'll definitely be on rotation if we end up in Vlora.
Yeah, absolutely. And the price on that, again, was higher than at the Albanian food restaurants or the like quick fast foodie places, but it wasn't crazy either. So,
but it also makes sense if the ingredients to make that food cost more because it's imported, which is what we've heard, that anything that's imported is going to cost more, obviously. Very true.
Kind of on that same note, when our hunt for Mexican restaurants and Mexican food, we ended up at a place called Jalapeno, and
it was very good.
It was very tasty. It wasn't. Mexican food is so tricky because even within the United States, it's so different from place to place. So finding something that exactly matches your state's brand of Mexican food is probably unrealistic if you have very specific tastes in Mexican food. There was no green chili.
Yeah, I was going to say Colorado green chili is definitely very unique to like Colorado. New Mexico green chili is not the same.
No. So we have pretty much given up on the idea that we'll be able to find good Colorado Mexican food. Not just in Albania, but really pretty much anywhere. We even had a Mexican dish or went to a Mexican restaurant in Spain a couple of years ago. And again, it was good, but it's just not what we're used to as our Colorado Mexican food.
Yeah.
But we were talking to the owner there, a gentleman who was originally from Puerto Rico, and he was telling us about the ordeal that he has to go through to get avocados. Because one of the things that stood out in the restaurant there was how good the guacamole was. And we were thinking...
And it wasn't extra to have guacamole on it. That was one thing that at first was like, there's guacamole?
Yes. And we were, at least I was expecting it to be, the crummy stuff that comes out of a squeeze bottle, like the places that cut corners in the U.S. have. But no, it was clearly hand-smashed, fresh guac. And that surprised me because I don't think they grow avocados in Europe at all. So they came a long way to get there.
Yeah.
But he was telling us about the ordeal that it is to get those avocados and how expensive it is, even when you're buying in bulk at like a restaurant-focused market.
Mm-hmm.
And
which was like half price of what you can get them in the store. But still, that's a lot of work to get your avocados. Like he goes down to Durres to get the avocados from his avocado man.
Yeah. So anything that is imported like that, it's going to cost a little extra or a lot extra depending on the thing you're getting, I guess.
Yeah.
But largely stuff was pretty available. Again, like the one standout thing that I was looking for that I couldn't find was the Spam. I'm sure it's somewhere in the country's got to sell Spam.
I mean, it is also a barely food product, so it makes sense if people don't eat it other places.
I guess if you told me it was illegal there, I would believe you. So that's fair.
Well, we'll find some type of sausage or something that's like kind of similar, but we're not going to find the same thing, I don't think.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Maybe we can start an import business for just Spam.
Yeah. But, the imported or the exotic foods, I guess, were all like good enough quality and like a similar recreation to what we're used to here for the most part. And in grocery stores, we could find most of the things we're after. I think the one thing that was kind of funny that just was so close but didn't quite hit the mark was the American food restaurant that we went to in Tirana.
Yeah.
And we wanted to try an American food place to see just what the take on it was. And I don't remember exactly what we ordered altogether. Nachos, okay.
Philly cheesesteak. And chimichanga bites.
Mini chimichangas,
yeah, mini
that's right.
chimichangas.
And all of them were good.
Yes.
But
they were
all
just
of them,
not quite right.
Yeah, they weren't quite what they were trying to be, which is to be expected if you're limited by what's available, and especially if it's not, unlike the Philly cheesesteak, if you're not a Philadelphian or something, you're probably not going to make it right anyway.
Incredibly insulted if you were from Philadelphia. But like, it was a good sandwich that had meat and some vegetables on it with some cheese. Yeah. It was good. It just wasn't a Philly cheesesteak.
Exactly.
Same with the nachos. It was like the Doritos brand tortilla chips with like a couple of globs of guacamole, some like melted shredded cheese on top that you just like put in like a microwave like a college kid, and some globs of salsa, and it all tasted good.
Yeah.
But it's not nachos.
I'm not usually a big guac fan, and that was honestly some of the better guac that I've had in my life. I would have gladly eaten that as a dip. And the sour cream was good. Just the variety of sour cream that they do in Albania in general is more to my taste than what we have here. A lighter, maybe not quite as sour, and it's more cream than sour.
It was probably their yogurt that they used.
It was
all
really
good yogurt.
And the salsa was also like...
It was really good. It was just like...
The way in which it was all assembled was just not quite a nacho.
Yeah. So if you were going there expecting it to be perfect recreations of American food, you would be disappointed. But it got the point across. Like, they had burgers on the menu and stuff like that, but we wanted to try some more like specific items.
Yeah, burgers are so like universal. It seems like everyone understands how that works. So trying something that was a little more specialized was interesting. And again, it was all delicious. It was all very good. The quality of the food that is just the standard there is so much higher than what we're used to that it's so easy to get.
It's still good.
Tasty food.
Yeah.
Just if you're from Philadelphia and you are very proud of your cheesesteaks in one specific way, just be advised you're going to be disappointed if you order it there. But yeah, I mean, it was really. I don't know
good.
what I expected. Probably
the
more
waiter was pleasant. It was a nice atmosphere. It was outside the pyramid in one of those like outbuildings that they have out there. So it was just nice to be in the area. It was pleasant.
Yeah,
the food was good. It was really interesting to see their take on American food.
Yeah,
they just obviously weren't following like American recipes.
I would go back. Like the food was good enough that I would go back, but. If we had out-of-town visitors that were feeling homesick and wanted some familiar food, I don't think I would take them there for that. Maybe we would settle for a KFC or a Burger King or a Pinch. We don't eat those personally very much here, but
yeah,
I assume that, I mean, the whole point of those restaurants is to be a consistent experience globally. So if you're wanting that homesick meal, either cook it yourself or settle for fast food chain.
Yeah, I would say you have to be a good cook to, I mean, I think it's a good life skill, but to be anywhere and you want to comfort yourself with food, cooking it yourself might be the only option.
Yeah, at least the most reliable, especially the farther you get away from home.
Yeah.
But I guess getting away from the restaurants and back into the grocery shopping experience, how would you say that went for you?
I would say pretty well. We checked out some of the larger grocery store chains. We didn't brave any of the fruit stands or vegetable stands because we didn't need those types of groceries while we were there, but it all looked amazing. It was easy to find most of the stuff that you wanted. They had really reasonably priced fresh pasta, fresh cheese. The meats were obviously a little more expensive. The dairy, again, probably a little more expensive than going to like the dairy store to get your cheese and stuff. But the prices were really good. They had a good selection of beverages, good selection of pretty much everything. It was just like a scaled down version from what we're used to in America with our like mega grocery stores. Yeah.
And I think the thing that we learned very quickly also is if you're looking for the best price, pure and simple, no bones about it, you got to go to the individualized specialty places. You got to go to the produce stands for your produce, and you got to go to the butcher shop, and you got to go to the dairy store. But then a step beyond that, if you're looking for a little bit more like one shop stop convenience, going to like the big chain grocery stores, the Spar and the Conad,
but not an Express.
Yeah, not the Express version of them. If you find one that's just the regular Spar or the regular Conad, I don't think we went into a regular big market, but I imagine it's probably similar. That's where you're gonna get the real combo of convenience and good prices. The first couple of grocery stops we made were just to little neighborhood like bodega shops, and the first one we went to was right next to the apartment, and the shelves were largely pretty bare, and a lot of the items that we ended up buying or were looking at, we saw a few days later at a Spar, and the neighborhood grocery store thing was, I don't know, a good 30 to 40% more expensive on a lot of things. So for pure convenience, if it's like right next to where you live, obviously that's a plus. But
just to go down the elevator and like 50 steps and you're in the grocery store and you need one item and it's the middle of the night, perfect for that. But yeah, we went to a Spar that was kind of set back from north of Bloku, and they had amazing prices there. That was the best price store that we had seen for the larger markets. But it wouldn't be convenient unless you lived in that neighborhood to get your groceries there. So they really have the market on, nope, for the grocery store on this block, this is what you're going to pay unless you're going to be walking a ways with your cart to get groceries. And we weren't set up for that.
No. I think if we were living somewhere like longer term, maybe not in Tirana, or at least that part of Tirana, because it was so busy, we would get like a little wagon or a push cart or something.
I saw a lot of the older people walking around with those little pull carts.
Oh yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Just having a easier way to get your stuff home a little bit longer distance, especially if you're going to be buying like bulk water or heavy things. It
Yeah.
would not be fun to carry that for miles to get home.
Well, we have to get a water guy. I've heard from some of the YouTubers about their like water people that deliver them water and stuff, which was one thing that we knew thankfully ahead of time, that you do probably want to buy water and not drink from the tap. So that was one of the first things that we did. We overpaid that first day because we just wanted conveniency.
Mhm.
So we paid for convenience. But it wasn't too like overbearing to buy your water and get like a giant jug. But you definitely don't want to be walking 20 minutes with a huge jug of water to get the best price.
Just be mindful, I guess, of, especially if you're looking to rent or buy a home down there. That's going to be probably one of the real driving factors for us, is proximity to a grocery store that we like or similar. Eventually we will be brave enough, I guess, to buy from the individualized places. The fruit stands in particular, it all looked really good, but it seemed like it would be more trouble than it's worth for both us and the shopkeeper to buy like an orange or something. Yeah. As just like a snack, and we weren't doing as much cooking as we expected to do just because we skipped a lot of dinners. Yeah, honestly. So we didn't end up needing to buy bulk produce for a real cooking adventure. But when you're living over there, that's different. Like it's just hard to... You're more careful to not over purchase when you're only there for a couple of weeks. So
yeah,
it wasn't meant to be this time, but eventually we'll start going that route as well. Maybe not for the meats. The places that are like clearly animals hanging from the walls are a little much for our delicate sensibilities, but
yeah, and there were some that weren't that extreme and fresh. I know why they have it like that, to show it's fresh food. Look, this is what it came from. It's good. You want to buy it. That just doesn't work for us.
We'll work up to it someday, maybe, but we're not there yet.
But and it really depended on the meat store, because I was kind of checking them out, because that kind of freaks me out. So some of them did have like whole body parts, and some of them did not. So it'd be easy to find ones that did not have that.
Right. Yeah. So that's true. They weren't all.
They were not like that. Yeah. So fresh.
So fresh. Yeah. Fresh is probably the best term for it. But I guess beyond food, we did a lot of window shopping. I guess we didn't really buy very much, but we did do some like scouting shopping. And largely it went pretty well. Like I was hoping in our preview video, if you go to the malls or like the bigger department store looking places, it is basically a same experience that you have here in the US. Credit cards were accepted pretty widely in like the shopping malls and the department stores, it seemed like. So if you really are just having a hard time adjusting and you're over it and you just need to get something and you want it to be simple and easy the way you're used to, that can be done.
And they had the gambit of like clothing to housewares to a food court to stuff for your kids. They had a lot.
Also, while we were there, we stopped into a couple of like bigger department stores to try to track down like kitchen items, cookware, bedding, electronics. Yeah, and I think we'll probably do a longer video breaking down our shopping experiences and our price checking. But just the quick overview, by and large, we were not able to find one-to-one comparisons on a lot of the things we have here. We couldn't find like an Instant Pot brand Instant Pot or a KitchenAid brand stand mixer. But there were other brands that we just aren't familiar with, probably European or something, that were identical to the eye. Yeah, like close enough that I'm feeling pretty good about not needing to bring all of those things with us, especially when you factor in the hassle that it would be to buy a power converter for every single appliance that you bring over because it won't plug into the wall. So that was pretty encouraging. It was all there. The prices were relatively competitive. Not knowing, the quality differences between brands, I can't make a definitive judgment, but it all seemed pretty reasonable on that front.
Yeah.
But
and we could find a good coffee maker there. We wouldn't have to bring our coffee maker.
yeah, so that helped quite a bit. And again, we'll deep dive on that in a future video.
Mm-hmm.
But the shopping experience for the new items like that was pretty good. And that is all, again, just with a lens of being there for 2 weeks and not knowing like where the good places to shop are. So
yeah, that's just like the stores. That's not the mom and pop shops of like, no, you go to this store for your cookware. Like they have the best deals, they have the best quality.
Yeah, not knowing like the intimate knowledge of the shopping, like surface level, it was all pretty accessible for the things that we'd be looking for at prices that are pretty comparable to what we would be willing to pay here.
Mm-hmm.
We did a little bit of secondhand shopping. Sarah's a big thrifter, and so we wanted to kind of scope that out also. And I'll let you speak mostly on it, but from the outside of somebody who only goes with you on your thrifts occasionally, it seemed a lot more complicated and segmented than we're used to here. Like here in the US, you can go to a pretty, at least in Colorado, a pretty large thrift store, and they've got just everything all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't seem to be as much the case there.
Yeah,
Right?
it certainly seemed like everybody specializes in their niche. Like there was used handbag stores, there was used clothing stores, some more like true vintage shops where it's a curated selection. There was used shoe stores, just shoes. One of the streets that we were staying near had a bunch of stalls, well not stalls, but buildings that were just kind of like, you pull up a big door and you're open for the day, that had a bunch of used furniture and some used appliances like washers, dryers, stoves, stuff like that. So there was a lot that you can find. I think there was one tool place that we walked by. We walked by a lot, so we did not go into all of them, but there are a lot of options out there if you wanted to do secondhand for getting your items. There were a couple antique stores that we saw if you wanted to have some more fancy higher end items. One had Murano glass chandeliers, so if that's something that you want, it's in Tirana. So yeah, there's a lot of options out there. It just depends on what you're looking for and doing the work to find the stores. Not everything is on Google, unfortunately. Like we're so used to here, just kind of Googling maps like, hey, is there one of these stores near me? And it'll tell you. So you might just be walking down the street and go, oh, hey, there's a store that sells the thing I've been trying to find. My
impression was that the overall selection might be better than what is available here in our area, but it's only going to be a lot more difficult to track it down. And difficult meaning that it's going to take you 3, 4, 5 stops to get everything that you're looking for. Yeah,
more higher quality items, like the good stuff that you'd find in a thrift store, and less of the you're digging through the stuff to find the good items. They've done that work for you. So it's more curated secondhand, not true thrift stores.
Still with the lens of having been there for 2 weeks, and maybe there are those places and we just didn't track them down, but at least for our overview first impressions, that's kind of the way it seems like the secondhand shopping works. It's very much like the new shopping, where to really get the good deals you got to go to the guy that does bicycles or the guy that does appliances, like you were saying. And just building up the network to know who the guy is going to take some time. Yeah, what you had to do before the age of the internet is definitely different. Yeah, having grown up almost exclusively in the age of the internet, that's going to be a pretty steep learning curve for us, I think. But not insurmountable, and I think it's something that'll be good for us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really makes you use your brain to be walking around and paying attention to what's going on around you and making those connections and building your circle, building your references. And I guess we've touched on it a couple times in passing a little bit, but one of the things that kind of worried us the most was the stray dog situation. It's something that we had heard quite a bit about. A lot of street dogs, are they aggressive? Are they like armies of them? Or are they just occasional? And where we saw mostly very well-behaved dogs. They're just kind of hanging out on the street. People take care of them in their neighborhoods that they hang out in. Specifically in Tirana, they just kind of roam around.
there weren't as many groups of dogs in Tirana. Like there was a couple puppies that were playing in one of the parks. You could tell they were buddies. But when we went to Vlora, there were more that you could tell kind of hung out together down by the beach. But they weren't aggressive.
Yeah, none of them that we encountered seemed aggressive. Nobody that we saw was being like aggressive towards the dogs or mean towards the dogs. Like nobody was kicking them or screaming at them or anything. We never saw it with dogs, but with pigeons and cats, if they wandered into a store, they would get shooed out. Very, politely and appropriately.
Yeah, the store that was near the apartment that we stayed, there was a cat that obviously lived in the alleyway. The lady just picked it up and was like, no, and put it outside.
So that was nice to hear that, or to see, I guess, that there are stray dogs and singular stray dog is more than we're used to seeing, but they were treated pretty well. They weren't so plentiful that it seemed problematic in general. That is one of the things that I think would steer us out of at least that portion of Tirana, because that would just be another thing for the dogs to get used to, not only being in a new place, but now they're surrounded by a bunch of noises and people they're not used to, and there's stray dogs that they don't know how to deal with.
And cats. Yeah, our dogs do not do well with cats.
So there would just be one too many stressors on the dogs, I think, for us to be in that part of town. But I think if we were somewhere where you remove some of the just city craziness and they can focus on only learning how to deal with the stray dogs, that it would be more manageable. The other thing that was kind of interesting to see is the way that people's pets were handled in town.
Yeah.
There was a lot of... It took us a while to figure out, which ones were owned animals and which ones were strays, because a lot of the times the owned ones would just kind of wander around off leash and just mostly stay near their person, and then they were remarkably well trained dogs. They would go meet up with their person before it was time to cross the street, so they were always on like the correct city block at least. But
there's a Samoyed that was very entertaining.
Yes, very cute. But she was all over the place while his person just kind of wandered down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And not in like a annoying way or anything. It was a very polite dog.
Being a dog, going and sniffing and glaring at other dogs in the distance. Well, not glaring, but there was another dog in the distance at one of the parks, and it just kind of stood there watching the other dog doing his thing. Yeah.
So I don't think our dogs will ever be at that level of well-trained, but...
No, we didn't do a good job training them when they were younger.
They're good dogs, but they're not that good.
Yeah, they're good. They're just not well-trained.
But if you isolate just the interactions with the public dogs, the street dogs, I don't think it would be a prohibitively big problem for us.
It would just be an adjustment for our dogs, because they're used to seeing dogs on leash, and dogs that aren't on leash, when they are outside, it's usually an indication that something bad is going to happen, because people don't train their dogs well enough. So with our older dog in particular, she's going to be a little more stressed about that.
Yeah.
So.
But I think as long as we're not in the crazy hustle and bustle, that it should be a manageable thing for us to be able to integrate the dogs in as well.
Yeah.
The other kind of dog related thing that we scouted out, I guess, is the food availability. Cookie needs to be on special food, and we did end up finally tracking it down at a particular pet store, but
very expensive.
It was
too much. So we're gonna have to look at options for just making her food, because the food, the ingredients for making her food would be so affordable. So we'll have to figure that out, and then see if there's any other brands that would meet her needs.
Yeah, there were some brands in like the same neck of the woods in the stores that maybe our equivalent. We'd have to talk to our vet to figure out for sure. It's just European brands that they don't sell here. And fingers crossed that they are pretty much equivalent. We'll have to do some more research and get some help from a professional to make sure that they are. But as long as they are equivalent, those were pretty reasonably priced and would not be cost prohibitive. So.
Definitely more reasonable than the prescription level food that we buy here.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing was the fireworks.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone talks about the fireworks. And so we did have a couple nights where there were just like intermittent fireworks every once in a while. From a distance, Cookie really doesn't like fireworks. She has a bad time around 4th of July and New Year's. So she would notice them, but it wasn't so much that she would be freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
Like 1 or 2 doesn't send her into like a full-on spiral. But when we were there, they beat Serbia in football.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crazy. For like, what, 2-3 hours?
Yeah, that was the one day. And it wasn't even the fireworks that were the problem there. It was people revving their engines, honking their horns, just
for
general jovial celebration for hours and hours and hours. But it was a special event and a really big and consequential win for them. But the regular day-to-day fireworks that we heard were not an issue. I think it was an instance where the big city
helps
kind of diminishes it. Yeah, because the fireworks, we could see them a couple times and they weren't really that far away, but there were so many buildings between us and them that the actual sound wasn't that loud by the time it got to where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that they were quiet enough that if she was already snoozing, I don't think they'd wake her. And if she was awake and hearing them, she would just be like,
what's going on?
A little weirded out and not in full 4th of July panic mode like she does. It was something that we had worried about that might be a problem with the dogs, but having been there,
I think it'd be okay.
Be pretty much a non-issue, yeah.
Yeah.
They won't be in a constant state of panic over the fireworks.
Yep. And the people who did have dogs that were on leash in restaurants, most of them were smaller dogs, but there were some larger dogs. So people seemed generally fine with you taking your dogs around. Not that we do that now, but it was nice to see that people aren't just like, no, you can't be in here because you have an animal.
Yeah. And we had heard some stories online about people being weirded out by dogs or maybe like cold towards dog owners, things like that. And there were enough people that were openly owning dogs in public that I feel like that's probably blown out of proportion. Like, obviously there's always going to be some people that have an issue with animals or just people that don't like pets.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't seem like, if it was a whole full-on like cultural distrust or dislike of dogs or having pets, there wouldn't be as many pet stores as we saw. There wouldn't be as many people walking around with animals. It
seems like it's a newer adjustment, I think in part because of all the animals, the stray animals. And there were so many, like, the pet stores did look very new, most of the dog food stores. So I think it's a trend towards accepting pets as something that people want. There were so many brown little poodles. Everybody had brown little poodle.
A lot of poodles.
That was like the dog to get a couple years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those.
It was kind of stood out to me. I don't know if you noticed the same thing, that most of the dog owners were older people, largely like older women, but older people
ladies
in general.
With their security dog.
Yeah.
Comfort dog.
Weren't very many younger people with pets out and about. There were some, but not as many as here. Like Colorado obviously is a huge dog spot, so it seems like you go out of the house and everybody's got a dog with them, young and old, but way fewer young people with pets in public than we're used to seeing here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any real concerns about like negative social connotations of having pets over there.
No, I didn't see anybody like freaking out and moving to the other side of the street because there was a dog coming. Everyone, I think because there are so many stray animals, they're just like, oh, it's a dog, but somebody owns that dog, so that's fine. I'm not going to freak out about it.
Which I guess is kind of what we should have expected, because the whole culture and society is so live and let live about everything. Why would it be different with owning pets?
And it's one of those things where like you feel bad seeing these animals out on the street because you want them to be comfortable and inside and pampered and spoiled, but they really are healthy appearing, and they seem to be living happy lives. People take care of them when they see them. So unless there were any that were injured, they were well fed. And even the injured ones, there was one that unfortunately looked like they'd hurt its leg. And she had a nice little bed, and somebody was obviously feeding her. So there are people that do take care of the animals. So it's not as bad as we were led to believe by reading the articles and seeing some of the videos online. I think it's much better. The number of the stray animals wasn't nearly what I was expecting.
Yeah, and maybe it just makes for a good story, and that's why we're coming across those stories.
Yeah.
Did kind of seem like, from what we had read ahead of time, that it was like a big problem, and that dogs are attacking people, and that there's armies of dogs around every corner just waiting to devour your children. But
I think part of that is people who aren't comfortable with dogs and don't know how to deal with dogs, because we were walking through the Tirana park and there was a little dog that was barking at a kid, and I think the kid just tried to pet the dog because the kid was obviously upset and the dog was upset. So I think if you don't know how to deal with animals and address animals and give them their space and know when they do or do not want you to approach them, you're fine. You just need to have the knowledge of how to deal with animals.
Tied in slightly, the last thing I wanted to get to in this first impressions video is transportation.
Uh-huh.
And that is one of the things that I don't know exactly how we would conquer with the dogs. We took the buses, and that worked great for people, but I don't think I spotted a single animal on a bus.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're expressly prohibited or if it's just too much of a pain in the ass and it's not worth trying to get them on there.
For our dogs, I think it would just be too much. I think you just have to find your taxi guy who's fine, or gal that's fine with transporting animals. I was on one of those Facebook groups, and someone had asked about, like, hey, I'm moving into the area. I've got a small dog. Can you give me some recommendations? And she replied, like, hey, found a guy. So I think you just have to find the people who are comfortable with you having animals in their vehicle and just disclosing that up front. Just like a Uber or Lyft would be here, you have to make sure that they're okay with that, or else they're just going to refuse to drive you.
Right. But dogs aside, the transportation that we took around and in and out of Tirana was all very smooth.
It was surprisingly easy once you figured out where you needed to go.
A bit of a learning curve. And I'm glad that we had our vacation stops in the order we did, because it's so polar opposite of London, where you use your cell phone for everything to beep in and out of the subway, the underground,
the tube,
whatever they call it, the tube, to beep in and out of the buses there before you get on and ride, versus Albania, total opposite. You pay in cash and you basically get on the bus, and eventually somebody will come over and ask you for the money.
Yeah.
And that threw us off a little bit. The city buses, yeah.
And then the buses out of town and like to and from the airport were interesting, because you go to a giant parking lot and they have signs everywhere, and people will be yelling for where they're going and go to the guy who's yelling about the place that you want to go to. Uh-huh. And sometimes you know how much it's going to be, sometimes you don't. One of the ones that I think it was when we went from the airport to Tirana, we paid up front. Mm-hmm. But then every other one was like, yeah, just get on the bus. And then you're like, did we pay? Did we not pay? When are we going to pay? And then you just like paid at the end.
Yeah, I think to and from Durres, we paid mid-ride. The guy came up and collected money. That's right. But to and from Vlora, we paid at the end, after we got off the bus at the end, yeah. So again, just kind of the inconsistencies, like we were saying with the restaurants. We don't know how to tell when it's going to work one way or the other.
They'll get the money and they'll ask you, but just don't worry about it, I think, is the main thing.
Yeah.
Just have enough cash to cover it.
Like the bus depot or station, for lack of a better word.
I think it's a depot.
It is so simple and makes so much sense. Like how much more clear can it get than you get on the bus with the sign for the place you're going and the guy standing out front yelling the name of the place you're going.
Yeah.
But it's so different from
what
we're used to in the US. Yeah, the loosey-goosey nature of it is
it's
just...
Not it. You have to have a ticket to even get near this thing.
Which it works totally fine, and I don't think that's like a bad thing. It's just coming from something that's so much more regimented and like process driven versus the Albanian system, which is just like, our goal is to get you from this place to this place, and we'll figure out the rest at some point. And the process doesn't matter. The results are what matter.
Yeah, you got to where you were going.
Yeah, you got to where you're going. We got our money. What happened in between doesn't matter. It'll just take a little getting used to, but it really is, if you can drop your expectations of needing like the rules and the process behind it, it's very simple and straightforward and frankly fairly streamlined. It's just in a totally different way than what we're used to.
Yeah, it seems a little chaotic, but it's just because we're not used to it. But once you figure it out, it's just like, yep, I go here, I go where that guy's telling me to go, and then I pay at some point. And I know I have enough money to pay. Yep,
exactly. And that is one place where the cash was very important, because they were all cash on the buses.
The only one that had a card was the bus to and from the airport, because when we were getting dropped off, there were multiple people that were paying with their cards.
That's true. The other routes all seemed cash only, and the city buses seemed cash only.
Yeah.
So make sure that you do have close-ish to exact change. They would still give change, but
it wasn't as consistent.
You don't want to whip out a 5,000 lek bill for a 40 lek bus ride. I think they might tell you to f off.
Yeah,
but
they might not be very pleased with you.
As long as you're like, I think we paid with a 200 lek note for the two of us, and they were fine giving us that level of change on the city bus. Just, be reasonable with it.
It was pretty easy. Pretty affordable, the city buses. I think if we were there longer, we would take them more, and those were quite affordable to get on and off. You just pay once and you ride it for as long as you want, and then you get off, and then the next bus you pay.
Yeah.
But they were pretty clean. It seemed pretty extensive. But yeah, pretty easy overall. So I'd say you can get around without the need for a vehicle. Taxis would be better if you have a specific destination and you don't want to take the bus. But I think you could get to most places with a bus.
Yeah. So I'm pretty happy with the transport overall. It's not as robust, and I think this is an advantage that we would have moving there as Americans, as opposed to an Italian or a Spaniard or somebody that is used to a robust rail system.
We don't have that.
Like we're not losing a rail system. We don't have that here anyway. So
yeah,
that
our rail system ends where we are. So
yeah, but it was as robust as we need it to be. The buses more so than what we have here, and it was totally serviceable for getting around.
And pretty often running, so it wouldn't be like, oh, you missed the bus, so you have to wait 45 minutes. Like the buses where we are, they are so far spread out. It adds so much time to your transportation.
Yeah, if you miss the bus you're waiting for, it's 15, 20 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
And the next one's coming and you're good to go.
Well, thanks for listening to us recount our trip and our thoughts about Albania. If you've been to Albania or are thinking about going to Albania, put in the comments down below what your thoughts are or what you're most looking forward to experience.
And like we mentioned, I think earlier in this video, we're planning to do some more deeper dives into some of these categories and some of these things that we experienced. So if you have any questions, anything you want us to elaborate on, leave us a comment on that as well, and we'll do our best to answer any lingering questions you guys may have on this.
Yeah, please like and subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our progress in our move over to Albania.
Otherwise, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us, and excited to continue bringing you along on our journey.